I spent 12 years building trust with our biggest client. 12 years of missed birthdays, canceled holidays, and 3 a.m. strategy calls. 2 weeks ago, my boss called me in, smiled, and said, "We're making leadership more family-focused." Translation: I was being replaced by his son. No warning, no handshake, just gone. But here's the twist. They didn't know I'd already found a flaw in their new pitch. I kept quiet until the client called me directly. Now, I'm sitting on leverage that could either ruin them or save me. Ever been stabbed in the back and handed the weapon at the same time? I was the architect behind every major win the firm had in the last decade. No exaggeration. From the first $10 million contract we signed to the $120 million multi-country deal we just closed with our Swiss tech client. I was the guy in the war room, the guy who never left the building, the guy who made it happen. That night, my daughter had fallen asleep beside me on the couch. She clutched her stuffed owl like it was a shield against the world. I was still reviewing a pitch deck, finalizing slides, running risk projections. I muted the laptop when her little hand tugged at my sleeve, murmuring, "Are you done working yet, Daddy?" I lied. Almost. I kissed her forehead and let her sleep on my chest while the graphs kept loading and the numbers kept spinning. Then, a ping, a direct message from HR. "CEO wants to see you first thing tomorrow. Strictly one-on-one. Please confirm." No context, no subject line, just wait. I barely slept that night, not because I was nervous. No, I had nothing to hide. I assumed he wanted a strategy refresh, maybe a new structure. We had momentum. Our name was buzzing across industries. I walked into that office with 2 printed reports and a USB with my final Q3 projection. He didn't ask for any of it. Instead, he leaned back, folded his arms, and said casually, "Hey, Lucas, did you know Brandon's been looking for something steady? He just wrapped up his MBA." I blinked. "Your son?" He nodded, smiling. "Yeah, he's ready to roll up his sleeves. He's got ideas." I waited for the link, the connection to our work, the need for my insight. It never came. "Do you think he'd do well here?" he asked, eyes locked on mine. There was a long pause. I thought of the reports in my hand, the all-nighters, the time I gave instead of taking. And now this, like all my contribution, was just a prelude to some legacy grooming. I forced a smile. "Depends what well means." He chuckled. "Fair enough. Was Carl." No decisions were announced. No titles changed. But when I walked out of his office, I felt something heavy shift. The floor didn't move. I did. That evening, I opened my inbox and found an invite to an all-hands meeting titled Leadership Transition Update. My name wasn't in the sender field. I wasn't CC'd. I was BCC'd subtle. The next day, at 10 a.m., the CEO took the floor. My team, my people, sat in neatly aligned rows. He cleared his throat, smiled wide, and said, "As part of our mission to modernize leadership, I'm thrilled to announce Brandon Evans will be stepping into a more active role overseeing strategic growth." No mention of me. No thanks for my service. No transition plan. Just Brandon, fresh from school, fresh from his father's wing, stepping into a spotlight I'd spent 12 years building. I froze. A few heads turned toward me. Some sympathetic, some confused, some just afraid to be seen reacting. I stared straight ahead, still, controlled. I felt like a portrait being painted by someone who never knew my face. When it was over, I walked straight to the stairwell, skipped the elevator. I needed air that didn't smell like betrayal. I called my mother. When she picked up, I couldn't get the words out. I just stood there, phone pressed to my ear, lips trembling. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just said softly, "I'm here." Later that afternoon, Brandon asked me how to access the project management dashboard. I stared at him. "You don't have access yet?" He laughed nervously. "Yeah, forgot the login." Forgot the login? He hadn't even been onboarded. They gave him my chair, but didn't even teach him how to sit in it. I helped him anyway, because I'm not like them. That night, just as I was preparing to shut down my personal laptop, a notification blinked. An email from my Swiss client's regional director, sent directly to my private address. Subject line: "What's happening over there?" I clicked it open. "Lucas, we've received some confusing messaging from your firm regarding the strategy rollout. It feels like a pivot, but with no clarity. We were under the impression you'd be leading. Are you still involved? Can we talk?" I didn't respond immediately. I stared at that message, heart pounding. The client hadn't been told. Or worse, they'd been told something that didn't add up. Do I reply? Do I let them in on what just happened? Part of me wanted to climb to the digital rooftop and shout the truth. Post it all on LinkedIn. Let the world see how merit loses to bloodlines. But another part, calmer, quieter, knew the cost of being seen as bitter. I hovered over the reply button. My phone buzzed. Another email. Same client. "Can you explain what's going on? Something's wrong." My fingers hovered. I typed 2 words. "Let's talk." Then I hit send. The call came at 10:42 p.m., just as I was brushing my teeth. I saw the name flash across the screen and stepped out onto the back porch. Barefoot, cold tiles pressing against my soles like a reminder I wasn't grounded. "Lucas," the voice on the line said, firm but hushed. "The guy who replaced you doesn't understand our needs. His entire pitch missed the core of our insight strategy." I stayed quiet, listening. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this a trap? A test? "He said your team's approach was outdated," the client continued, "and now upper management here is wondering if we picked the wrong firm." I opened my mouth to explain, instinct pulling me to defend what was never his to begin with, but he cut me off. "Before you say anything," he said, his tone suddenly more careful, "this call is being recorded for my own protection." I froze. He wasn't trying to trap me. He was afraid. "Are you being monitored?" I asked. A long pause. Then, "There's suspicion that someone internally on our end is compromised. I've been told not to engage further with your firm directly, but I wanted to hear from you. I need to know what's real." And suddenly, I saw the shape of the game. Not just betrayal, not just nepotism, but a tightening net of corporate surveillance and misdirection, pulling even the client into the drama. "I'm not with the team anymore," I said quietly. "Not by choice." "I figured," he replied. "I read between the lines. Your silence says more than a press release ever could." I hung up 30 minutes later, after a careful, coded exchange that revealed just enough, but not too much. Then I sat at my desk and pulled up one of my final reports. It was version 17B of the Swiss rollout strategy. Clean, polished, precise. A document I'd spent weeks refining. Now stripped of my name, presented by a man who hadn't written a single slide. The blue and white font danced on the screen like ghosts of effort past. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just stared, like I was looking at a tombstone with my name carved on it, but no body buried underneath. If silence protects your dignity, but allows a lie to grow, is it still noble? I ask myself that while sipping cold coffee from a chipped mug. The answer didn't come. The next morning, an envelope waited on my desk. Hand-delivered, no return address. Inside, a termination agreement, dressed up as a graceful exit package. Legal language wrapped around poison. It promised a 3-month severance, health coverage for 6, and, most dangerously, a clause that barred me from speaking publicly or privately about anything that occurred inside the company for the next 5 years. 5 years. A gag order disguised as goodwill. I took it to our kitchen table. My wife read the first 3 lines and stopped. Her eyes filled with panic. If you say no, they could sue, right? Maybe, I said. And if you say yes, you disappear. I nodded. She sat down hard, her hands gripping the edge of the table like it might slip away. You spent your life building something, she whispered. Now they want to bury it, and you with it. I folded the paper again. The weight of it seemed heavier now, more than a few ounces of paper should be. And then the final straw. As I scrolled through my phone later that night, an internal company memo was forwarded to me anonymously. It claimed that the recent strategic failures in the Swiss account were due to legacy systems and outdated frameworks left behind by the former leadership. My name wasn't mentioned, but it didn't have to be. They were building the narrative. Lucas was the reason for the instability. Brandon was the future. A clean rewrite of the truth. I stared at the screen. My hands clenched. Then I opened my personal email, found the contact info for an investigative financial journalist I'd met years ago during a conference in Seattle, someone who knew how to follow threads. No subject line, no preamble. I attached the contract, the client's redacted message, and the memo. Then I wrote one sentence. I think you'll find this story bigger than it looks. I hovered for just a moment. Then I hit forward. I didn't put my name on the paperwork. The LLC was registered under a third-party proxy in Delaware, masked through a digital strategy firm that never listed its founders publicly. The name, Cipherline, clean, anonymous, intentional. I needed a place to build without being seen. Not for fear, no. I wasn't hiding out of shame, but because the game wasn't over, and the element of surprise was still mine. Cipherline was lean, just me and a laptop for the first 4 days. Then on day 5, I got an email from someone I hadn't spoken to since the day I was pushed out. Meredith. She'd been on my analytics team, sharp as glass and twice as cutting when needed. Her message was short. Saw what happened? I'm out too. If you're building something better, I want in. I'm done clapping for Brandon. We met at a coffee shop, faces half lit by the flicker of a rainy afternoon. She looked tired, but wired, determined. I still have access, she said, sipping her espresso. They didn't revoke my credentials yet. You want to know what they're feeding the clients? I nodded. Only if you're sure. I'm beyond sure, she replied. I'm angry. Together, we started re-engineering the rollout strategy the firm had butchered. Not copying, refining. And this time, we didn't have to cut corners to please a board. We made it honest, tight, battle-tested. Then Brandon posted on LinkedIn. I saw the notification on a Saturday morning while flipping pancakes for my daughter. Proud to lead our new vision forward with bold strategies and fresh insights. Attached was a snapshot of a slide from the pitch deck. My slide, the original version, the one I had buried in a folder labeled Do Not Share Incomplete. He'd pulled it from the archive and rebranded it with his initials. I stared at it for a long time. My daughter poked my side. "Daddy, you're burning the pancakes." I turned off the stove. That night, I sat with her on the couch, her head on my arm. "Why are you sad again?" she asked. "I'm not sad," I said, forcing a smile. "Just thinking." She nodded like she understood, even though she didn't. Then I told her something I'd never said out loud. Being good at something doesn't always mean people will notice, but that doesn't mean you stop being good. She blinked slowly. "Okay, Daddy." That conversation stayed with me. So did the choice in front of me. Reveal myself publicly, take credit, and possibly draw attention too soon. Or keep the mask on. Build momentum quietly. I hesitated until the client emailed again. Subject line: public launch approaching. Would you consider coming on board officially? Senior strategic architect? They wanted me out in the open. I closed the laptop without answering. Not yet. Timing was everything. The next morning, I published a post on Medium. No names, no blame. Just a surgical takedown of flawed strategic assumptions. The kind Brandon had baked into their recent pitch. I broke down the logical inconsistencies, the missed market cues, the blind spots. It read like a white paper, clean, impersonal. But any executive in the loop would know exactly which firm I was talking about. It spread fast. Within 24 hours, it had been shared 40,000 times. By day 3, I was trending on LinkedIn without a name attached. Then came the legal warning. A letter, couriered to my door, threatened legal consequences for defamatory insinuation unless the post was removed. I laughed, because that letter was the first real admission. I'd hit a nerve. Then Meredith forwarded me something unexpected, a voice memo, sent from an anonymous colleague still inside the firm. It was the CEO's voice. "I had to let Lucas go," he said. "If I didn't, Brandon would have never been taken seriously, and I couldn't have my own son outshined." I listened to it twice, once with rage, once with relief, because now I wasn't paranoid. I was right. The next day, I visited my mother in the hospital. She was recovering from a minor surgery, cheerful and groggy. She squeezed my hand, saw something in my face, and asked, "You still hurt?" I paused. Some days, less than others. She smiled, nodded. Don't let bitterness be what they take last. I kissed her forehead and walked out. That night, I received an email from a private address. Subject: "Can we talk?" No PR. Just you and me. I need help. No one trusts me anymore. It was from the CEO. The article hadn't even cooled down before the fallout began. Within 72 hours of my anonymous white paper going viral, 3 major investment firms quietly pulled their capital from the company. Not because of a scandal, yet, but because their legal teams smelled instability. No one wanted their name tied to a brand that couldn't explain why their lead strategist had vanished without explanation or credit. Then came the leaks. An internal email thread between Brandon and HR was forwarded to several former employees, and from there, it bled online. The contents were sharp enough to slice reputation. Brandon was proposing a soft disconnect from legacy staff. In his words, "Let's ease them out. No fanfare, no confrontation. Ghost them quietly." People were furious. Staff who'd given years to the firm now realized they weren't just replaceable. They were already being erased. And then came a resignation that set the tone. Jonathan Reyes, the firm's CFO of 8 years, publicly stepped down. His resignation letter, which he posted on LinkedIn, read, in part, I cannot remain complicit in a leadership culture that values loyalty to names over integrity of service. I regret not standing by Lucas when it mattered. This is my line in the sand. I read it 3 times. I hadn't spoken to Jonathan since I was pushed out. He'd stayed quiet, maybe out of fear, maybe out of ambition. But now, he was the first to publicly admit the truth. That night, my daughter curled up beside me on the couch as the news trickled in. "Daddy," she whispered, watching me scroll through my phone. "Did you win?" I paused. How do you explain justice to a 7-year-old? Especially justice that took months to arrive, that crawled in quietly, without parades or fireworks. I think, I said slowly, we're starting to make things right. She nodded like that was enough. But the real question twisted inside me. Was it? Because with every public unraveling came collateral damage. Good people, people who had nothing to do with the betrayal, were losing their footing. Projects were paused, salaries delayed, lives disrupted. I knew what it looked like. I'd lit the fuse. So when Meredith called and said, "Some of the old team wants to jump ship, but they don't know where to land. Should we help?" I didn't answer right away. Do I let the house burn to the ground? Or try to pull people out while it collapses? The next morning, I received a letter from the Federal Financial Crimes Division, a formal request. They wanted to speak with me, as a witness, a whistleblower, possibly more. My hands were steady as I folded the letter back into its envelope, but inside, everything trembled. Later that day, I met the CEO, not in his office, not in a boardroom, at a diner just outside the city where no one wore name tags and the coffee refills never stopped. He looked smaller, older, not in years, but in weight, like the pressure had compacted him. "I never wanted to be your enemy," he said after our coffees were poured. "You didn't hesitate to make me one." He looked down, stirred his cup. I thought if Brandon didn't get this chance, he'd never forgive me. I didn't say anything. He filled the silence. He's not ready. I see that now. I saw it even then. But he's my son. There it was, the truth. Simple, human, infuriating. "I asked you to leave," he continued, "because you were too good. And if you stayed, Brandon would never rise. I gambled. I lost. I leaned back. And now you want my help?" He nodded. "I need someone the board trusts, the public trusts, someone who hasn't lost their name." "And you'd sacrifice Brandon?" He didn't answer. He didn't have to. 2 days later, the internal audit leaked. Brandon had been diverting small funds. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to show negligence, enough to justify removal. I watched the company turn on him, the same way they turned on me. I sat at the kitchen table with my daughter that night, helping her with math homework. She got a problem wrong and looked embarrassed. "It's okay," I told her. "Getting it wrong isn't bad. Hiding it is." She smiled. Later that night, I opened an old folder. Inside was a saved voicemail, one I'd forgotten about. It was from the CEO, months before my departure. "Lucas," his voice said, half drunk and unguarded, "I need you to let go of the client oversight. Give Brandon something, anything. Make him feel like he's leading." He'd laid the groundwork for my exit long before the announcement. I had the proof. And now, I didn't even need it. The world had drawn its own conclusions. I stood at a crossroads. Help rebuild the firm under new management, rehire the good ones, restore order, or walk away and let the chips fall. Then, another email. This time, from a global ethics coalition I'd never heard of. Subject, Corporate Justice Initiative, seeking strategic lead. Your name came highly recommended. I stared at the screen, not to destroy, not to react, but to lead change permanently. Maybe this wasn't about getting back what I lost. Maybe it was about building something that couldn't be taken in the first place. The knock came just after midnight. 3 slow taps, a pause, then 2 more. I knew that rhythm. When I opened the door, he was standing there, disheveled, eyes sunken, suit wrinkled like he hadn't taken it off in days. The CEO, the man who replaced me, the man who watched it all fall apart and said nothing. And now, he dropped to his knees on my doorstep. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice hoarse. "I know it's late, and I know I'm late, but I'm here." I said nothing, just stared down at him. "You don't have to forgive me," he continued, "but I needed you to hear it. I was wrong. About everything." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me, shielding my daughter from the image of a broken man kneeling like a ghost from our past. He stood up slowly, wiping his hands on his coat. "They're voting to remove me," he said. "The board, tomorrow." I thought I had more time, but they're done covering for Brandon, done covering for me. I crossed my arms. "You want me to what? Help you now?" "I want you to help the company," he said. "Not me. Help the people still worth saving. I'm not asking for a lifeline. I'm asking for a reckoning, one I can't lead anymore." I laughed, dry, bitter. "You used me. You silenced me. You stood by while your son gutted my work." "He's gone," the CEO said quietly. "Packed a bag last night, left a note, said he couldn't carry the weight of it anymore." He reached into his coat pocket and handed me the folded letter. "Lucas, you didn't deserve what happened. I know that now. I spent months trying to earn a chair I hadn't built, carrying a name I didn't understand. I let my pride become cruelty. I hope one day you'll see this not as an apology, but as proof I finally saw myself clearly." Brandon. I held the paper like it might burn through my fingers. My throat tightened, my vision blurred. I didn't speak. He placed a business card in my other hand. "You want control? You've got it. They'll follow you. Just say the word." Then he walked back into the night. I stood there for a long time, the cold biting at my bare feet, the weight of that letter heavier than anything he'd ever said to my face. Forgiveness isn't easy. It's not a single moment. It's a series of choices you make between wanting peace and wanting revenge. The next day, I walked into the boardroom for the first time in nearly a year. All the faces turned, some ashamed, some hopeful, 1 or 2 indifferent. "I'll help," I said, "but on one condition." The room held its breath. "He steps down, publicly, today." They agreed. For the next 60 days, I led the reconstruction, not of the brand, but of the values beneath it. We rehired quietly. Not everyone, just the ones who never played the game. Meredith returned. So did 3 analysts who once called me their mentor. Even Jonathan Reyes, the ex-CFO, consulted unofficially. We didn't design a flashy comeback. No rebranding campaign. No big reveal. We rebuilt with silence and clarity. And when it was stable, just stable, I left. No farewell party, no press release. Just a message to the team. Leadership isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about knowing when to leave quietly. 3 days later, I was riding my bike beside my daughter through a quiet park. She raced ahead, laughter echoing through the trees. I caught up to her at the top of the hill. She looked up at me, cheeks flushed. "Did you fix it, Daddy?" I nodded. "Yeah, I think I did." She smiled. Good. Now can we go get ice cream? That night, I checked my email one last time before bed. A message from a federal ethics commission. Subject: Strategic Advisor Role, National Business Integrity Task Force. They wanted me to help redesign ethical frameworks for corporate leadership across industries. My name had been suggested by multiple sources. I stared at the screen, heart steady for the first time in months, but I didn't answer. Not yet. I needed time, because forgiveness isn't weakness, but it takes strength to walk away from something you can still control. Later that week, I booked a one-way ticket, didn't tell anyone, didn't leave a note, just packed a bag, turned off the lights, and walked out the door. Quietly, finally free. The town was small, with a single blinking stoplight and a bookstore that sold more coffee than paperbacks. But that's what I wanted. No skylines, no corner offices, no 20-minute meetings that should have been 2-line emails. Just space, stillness. I bought a house near the woods, big enough for my daughter to run barefoot, small enough that I'd notice if she wasn't home for dinner. Most mornings started the same. Tea, not coffee. My laptop open, camera off. I ran an online course. Strategic Thinking for Ethical Leaders. Free. No certificates, no fluff. Just stories, questions, and people tuning in from kitchens, basements, borrowed office space. One evening, after a quiet session, someone knocked. It wasn't the mailman or a neighbor. It was Casey, an analyst I hadn't seen since the day I was pushed out. He looked older, or maybe just lighter, like a burden had been set down. I found your sessions online, he said. I left the firm last month. I didn't want to do it the way they did anymore. If you're building again, I'd like to be part of it. No contracts, just the cause. We talked on the porch until the stars blurred into the edge of the world. I didn't promise anything, but I didn't say no. The next day, my daughter came home from school holding a crumpled paper. We had to write about someone brave, she said. I picked you. She read aloud. My dad used to work at a place where people lied a lot. He didn't lie. They made him leave. But he didn't stop being smart. He helped people anyway. He's the bravest person I know. I looked at her. She didn't understand everything. But somehow, she got the most important part. Later that night, I sat on the porch with that paper in my hands and asked myself the question I'd avoided for weeks. Was this it? Could peace be enough? Because while I declined the government's invitation, twice, they kept calling. They wanted my help shaping national frameworks for corporate accountability, ethics, leadership, big words, big risks. I told them I wasn't interested. But was I? The next morning, an envelope arrived. No return address. My name, handwritten. Inside was a single page. Lucas, I left too fast, too angry. I didn't deserve your forgiveness and I still don't. But I'm trying to be better. Publicly, honestly, because of you. If you ever need me, I'll be where it all began, trying to rebuild the right way. Thank you for not becoming like me. Brandon, I didn't cry, but something shifted in my chest, quietly, like a door unlocking. 2 weeks later, Brandon posted publicly for the first time in months. A video, unedited, raw. He looked into the camera and said, Lucas Evans didn't just outsmart me. He saved me. From arrogance, from entitlement, from myself. The comments were brutal, forgiving, skeptical. Everything you'd expect from the internet. But it didn't matter. He said it, and that mattered. A few months passed. Then the emails came, from universities, from companies, from journalists. One in particular stood out. Harvard Business School. Subject: requesting permission to develop your experience into a case study for our curriculum. They weren't interested in the scandal. They wanted the journey, the ethics, the restraint, the evolution. I gave them permission. I flew out for the launch. I sat quietly at the back of the lecture hall while a professor explained the Evans Principle, a framework built not on dominance, but on integrity, timing, and silent resilience. When it ended, a student approached me. "Was it worth it?" she asked. "Losing everything to rebuild it like this?" I smiled. I didn't lose everything. I just stopped chasing the wrong things. Later that year, I stood on stage at a global leadership summit. Lights low, thousands watching. I wasn't nervous. I'd been unseen for so long that being seen didn't scare me anymore. "I'm not a hero," I told them. "I'm just someone who chose not to shut up." And sometimes, that's where justice begins, with one person refusing to look the other way. The crowd stood. I didn't need the applause. That night, I flew home. No red carpet, no entourage. Just me, a backpack, and my daughter waiting on the front step, waving like I was returning from a lifetime away. We walked out into the backyard. The stars were sharp, the air honest. She looked up. "Are you done now?" I knelt beside her. "Yeah," I whispered. "I'm really home now." She leaned her head on my shoulder, and we watched the sky keep spinning.